Well, Rob, thank you very much for your time today. Malcolm Turnbull's budget, delivered by Scott Morrison last night, hasn't been much of a reaction today. It seems like almost a half-assed budget, if I may.
Yeah, look, it has been actually. It's been a very interesting response to the budget. What we've seen is a budget that's delivering tax cuts for millionaires. I mean, I think the front bench were pretty excited last night because they're all getting a minimum of $5,000 tax cut.
Lucky.
They are very, very lucky, aren't they? You know, and at the same time, we're seeing massive increases in debt and deficit, and of course, people on low wages, people on fixed incomes are bearing the brunt of it. So when the government talks about the budget being fair, it's fair for rich, but it's not fair for the poor.
How does it affect people in your electorate? You're a regional Victorian electorate. We haven't heard much about things outside the capital cities. You had a lot about housing affordability, which is mainly about Melbourne and Sydney. Yeah. But what about your vote, those in your area?
What we've seen is that this government, again, continues not to invest in the fastest growing areas in Melbourne. So my electorate takes the outer urban edge of suburbia into rural and regional areas. The state government has been releasing land hand over fist to try and work with the housing affordability crisis. This government is not investing a cent. There is not 1 cent of infrastructure or support being put into the seat of McEwen. We're the most densely populated seat in the country. And it's just another example of the Prime Minister not being able to see any further than point by.
Well, you're in the wrong party, obviously, because I was in question time today and the member for Maranoa was getting a full, the Treasurer got up and rattled off a whole list of millions of dollars that are being spent in, maybe it's the National Party seat, is it, Maranoa?
Look, it is, and it was very interesting.
The Deputy Prime Minister was boasting about that.
Talking about mobile black spots. Now, if we use the government's own criteria, McEwen is the seat in the nation that most fits the criteria of the government. Because we didn't account for one piece of criteria, and that's pork barrelling. And that's why we've seen seats like Maranoa and even the Deputy Prime Minister. I mean, 28 mobile phone towers in New England. They did exceptionally well out of this government to be able to be pork barrelled in the way that they were, just to keep Barnaby Joyce on the front bench. But what it means is communities that have suffered the most from natural disasters. And we had the Black Saturday bushfires, 187 lives lost on that day, and many afterwards, and not getting support from mobile phone black spots and not getting NBN coverage. And we live through that each and every summer to see if we can get through without it.
So $75 billion on infrastructure, it seems then you don't think that's going to the right places?
Well, I think what we've seen is typical of slow-mo, is that we've seen a pea and thimble trick. What we heard today was actually, it's based over 10 years, so it's actually a cut in infrastructure spend. So you've got a government that comes out with a big, hey, look, we're spending all this money on infrastructure, but of course, anything to do with this government, you've got to look at the devil's in the detail, and the detail shows that it's actually a cut in infrastructure spend. And not only that, the Prime Minister's now setting up his little jobs for the boys' mate department in his office and taking away the independent umpire. Infrastructure Australia, that's what they're there for, to assess these projects. He's taking that away and putting it in his own office. Clearly, something to hide.
Well, they go on. I mean, I remember Malcolm Turnbull and I think Morrison as well, bagging the Labor Party about backing winners. This whole idea that you don't back particular things, particular projects. But they've announced all the money for Badgerys Creek Airport, the Melbourne to Brisbane rail link. Aren't they attempting to back winners by doing that exact same thing? Yeah,
it's an amazing, the hypocritical nature of this government. I mean, not only are they trying to erase everything that was done under Labor, they're also now trying to erase everything they've done 2 years ago. We just spent an hour this morning. I was in the Speaker's chair. Spent an hour debating the removal of zombie measures bills. Not one single member of the government got up and spoke. They still believe that we should be attacking pensioners. They still believe we should be attacking low-income earners. But again, what we've seen is the government out there saying, "Oh, we've done this, we're doing this." Well, in actual fact, they haven't started the airport. They haven't started the rail. They haven't started the Snowy 2.0 and everything else. It's a government that's been in power for 4 years, and to be honest, SFA would be a very...
The never budget, perhaps, because they, as you say, it's very hard to pin down something that this government could be proud of. Everything's being pushed forward to the forward estimates and beyond. I mean, the surplus is now, into the never again in the future. Paying for all these things seems to have been put onto the never now, and we've got this idea that suddenly we've got good debt whereas your debt was always bad debt.
Yeah, I know. It's. I guess they're trying to bring the language down enough that Scott Morrison can understand it. So they dumb it down to the good debt, bad debt. But the reality is, for all these years, we've heard from the Conservative treasurers in hockey who must be rubbing his hands together now, thinking, "Thank God I'm not considered the dumbest treasurer." Slow-mo's just taken that mantle, hand over fist. But what we've seen is the government talk about what they're going to do. I mean, we had them with we're going to have a surplus each and every year in government. Now we're talking 2021. We're talking about, the government used to have their debt truck running around. Well, now you'd need a road train. I mean, Morrison admitted today that we're going to see over $600 billion of debt. The government spent all these years saying we don't have a revenue problem, we have a spending problem. So what are we seeing? We've seen a budget now that increases some $20 billion in taxes and then increases spending. This is the highest taxing, highest spending government on record. It's actually
let me play you something that I heard earlier from Malcolm Turnbull.
It's putting Howard to shame with the way that they've done this. It's just an absolute embarrassment to the Liberal Party and their supporters that this is a budget they have brought down.
Why have they done this? I mean, it was Peter Wish-Wilson of the Greens who said to me this morning he thinks it's a half-assed budget, and I've kind of clung on to that because it seems to me that that's right, because I asked him, I said, in previous years when I've covered budgets, there's always been something exciting or something controversial or some kind of surprise or some kind of oh shit moment, when the Treasurer speak, you were waiting for it. But last night, I mean, we could have slept through Morrison's speech and got up this morning, the world wouldn't have changed.
No, that's right, and I think that was shown today when they're highlighting, we're going to go after the banks with our taxation. The banks aren't worried about it, they're going to pass it through the customers. This was supposed to be their big tough cop on the beat, Malcolm the merchant banker out there whacking the big banks, and the big banks just laughed and said, fine, you can tax us, we'll just pass it on to customers. So it's actually going to impact poor people. People that Malcolm Turnbull doesn't care about, He's got his money offshore in the Caymans, he's avoiding tax. But people in Australia, the ones that are actually as the government's old term of lifters and leaners, it's the people at the bottom end, the people on fixed income, low incomes, middle incomes, families that are paying for this. And the high point of the government is to throw a little bone to the banks and say, look, we'll hit you for a levy, you pass it on to your customers and avoid a royal commission.
It does almost feel like that deal's been done, doesn't it? I mean, I just get the sense that deal's done now, that the banks, they got dragged down to Canberra and got a bit of a tickle up and, a bit of a boot up the arse and told, look, nod, wink, here's a little kick up the arse, but keep the pillow in your pants and then it'll all be right. That's my sense of what's happened.
I don't think the banks are worried the slightest about what's been happening, and, you'd have to question, yesterday there was a big run on the banks and they lost a lot of money on the share market. Who leaked the information? Who let them know that this was coming? It's just appalling.
Well, they were here a couple of weeks ago having a meeting.
Yeah, they did. They had a cup of tea and some cucumber
so they would have known
soldier sandwiches and had a chat with Malcolm and, don't know why they didn't query him on putting his money in Australian banks.
The other aspect of the welfare aspect of the budget, I suppose, is the thing that's getting a lot of attention today. I mean, the high profile things like, it must be bash a dole bludger week again this week.
Oh, look, it's the government's favourite thing. Find a poor person and bash them. They just love it. And this rubbish they're putting on about, randomised drug testing. When you read through the budget papers, it's not randomised. They're actually choosing who they're going to do.
Well, have the suburbs or the places been targeted, been named yet about where they're going to go?
No, not yet, but I think you can guarantee they're not going to be in Point Pine.
No, it won't be. Well, it'll be in Redfern and
places
with high known drug-dependent populations. So that they can prove a point.
Low socio-economic. I mean, if you really want to go after drug, then go and have a look at these wealthy suburbs where
it's cocaine.
Go after cocaine market. But I mean, the sad part is, what they're going to do is find people who are vulnerable, people who are struggling, and they're going to say to them, your chances of getting a job are very hard at the best of times when you've got a disability and dependence. So they're going to go and say to them, your job chances are slim. We're going to take away any form of support you've got through welfare. Where are they going to get money from? They're going to be crawling through windows and stealing things, or it's It's just preposterous.
But then they can ramp up the law and order campaign, and they've got a double
Oh,
whammy,
that's,
haven't
yeah,
they?
they could put on their, well, you know, we had
We-
Christopher Pine as a steelworker yesterday, so maybe next week he can be the policeman.
You
as
can
he
put it
runs
through that. He'll run through the
the-
village people
Oh,
eventually,
yeah.
won't he?
I don't want to see him as an Indian.
Loincloth, you don't think you look great in a loincloth.
Definitely not.
Fair enough. Rob, anything else? I mean, anything else you think sticks out for you as a Labor backbencher? I mean, in terms of the politics of the budget. I mean, you know, I mean, I'm curious to know whether you think that Scott Morrison will be delivering the budget this time next year.
I reckon that's just about a permanent no. I think what we've seen was this budget, and, you know, and it's been called by a couple of people a Labor light
Yeah,
budget.
Labor light.
Labor would never ever be going into a budget to look after millionaires and attacking the vulnerable. We don't do that. That's just not us. It's not in our DNA. It's not our values. But I think what we're seeing was a Prime Minister who's been behind in every single poll this year, and of course, you know, he removed Tony Abbott after 30, so you can imagine each news poll that comes out, he'll be sitting there going, oh,
Has Abbott got a little thing on his wall like in the prison,
yeah,
you know,
probably have, yeah.
striking off the news
I
polls?
might have a little voodoo doll there or something, but I think what we've seen was a Prime Minister desperate to hang on. The only job he's interested in is his own.
Yeah.
And when you've got, you know, the smug couple of Morrison and Dutton circling, he's in a panic. And he's tried to shift perceptions about where they are. But of course what we see is the budget isn't going to last the full day. He delivered it last night and already people are picking through it and realising just how bad it is. It was all smoke, it was all mirrors, but at the end of the day, you know, it was a big party last night. But it's actually the nation that's going to end up with the hangover, and it's us that's going to pay for it.
Jobs and growth. It's about Malcolm's
We've
job.
dropped that now. We don't talk about jobs and growth because jobs are down, unemployment's up, and growth's down.
The only thing that's growing is the debt.
Yeah, exactly. And Malcolm's pay packet. So, you know, he's after keeping his job and the growth of his pay packet.
That's right. There's Malcolm's job and the growth of his offshore bank account.
Exactly.
Thanks, Rob. Cheers.
That's a pleasure. Anytime.
Thank you.